We start here tonight with our continuing coverage of the allegations of rape against Bills rookie punter Matt Araiza. We're now hearing from the alleged victim, her attorney, and a lawyer representing Araiza. In a moment, we'll have an extended portion of an interview that he did with our sister station out in San Diego, where that lawsuit says the sexual assault happened. First, though, some background in case you're not fully up to speed. A woman identified only as Jane Doe claims in this civil lawsuit filed yesterday that Araiza and two of his fellow San Diego State football players gang raped her last year during an off-campus party. She was 17 at the time. Araiza was 21. She claims in graphic detail that she had sex with Araiza despite him knowing that she was underage and intoxicated. After that, she says he led her into a bedroom with three other men there waiting. The lawsuit says, quote, Araiza threw Doe onto the bed face first. Doe went in and out of consciousness while she was being raped. Through his attorney, Matt Araiza strongly denied any sexual assault.
He is 100% adamant that he never forcibly raped this young lady or forcibly had sex with her in any type of way or had sexual relations with her while she was intoxicated, whether it be on alcohol and or drugs.
Jane Doe here paints a picture where she walked into the party. She says she was already intoxicated when she came in, and she said she ended up having sex. She agreed to have sex with Matt Araiza a short time later. She says she had never met him before. Is your client saying that that's what happened?
My client saying he had never met her before, but that they spoke that night and there was some interaction that night, but that he never ever did anything forcible with her whatsoever.
And again, this is Matt Araiza's residence at the time where this happened, where the party was occurring.
Somebody else told me that today. This was not Matt Araiza's residence.
Okay, so that's in dispute as well.
That's in dispute.
Okay. The Jane Doe here says that he should have known that she was a minor. She says she told him she goes to Grossmont High School, and she says it should have been obvious to him that she was drunk. What's the response to those particular claims?
Right after I got hired about 6 weeks ago, we got a private investigator who's spoken to many people who were at the gathering that night, including one of her friends. And there is no doubt in my mind that those allegations are false. She was telling everybody at the party that night that she was 18 years old and went to Grossmont College, not to Grossmont High School.
What about the allegation that she was drunk? He gave her a drink, there was something in it, and he should have known that she was drunk.
He never gave her a drink. He never gave her any intoxicating substance, and she was not visibly intoxicated when he was speaking to her. I've heard those allegations. I have numerous witnesses lined up to say that she was not slurring, not stumbling, or anything like that.
Joining us live right now to talk about this is Frank LoTempio III, a local attorney and legal analyst. And Frank, obviously so many questions surrounding all of this, but I want to start here. Araiza's attorney there eventually said that this was a shakedown, that this woman is trying to make money from an NFL player. But the alleged victim, we now know, went to police right away after she says this happened. Doesn't that weigh in her favor, at least in terms of motivation?
I do think that certainly helps. I think on the opposite end of that, though, I think what hurts is that there's been 10 months since this happened, since the reporting, and there is no charges or indictment. So that leads me to believe that there are some questions still with the police or the district attorney's office at this time.
Yeah, the attorney did say that he does not believe that there will be criminal charges, but that's certainly still possible. We believe it's an ongoing criminal investigation. But again, this is a civil lawsuit that we're talking about. We learned in this, though, about some phone calls that the alleged victim made to Araiza and the other two people who are named in this lawsuit. This was right after she had reported the rape to police. Police were actually with her on these calls. I want you to listen, and our viewers listen, to how she described this to our sister station in San Diego.
The phone calls started off, the approach is really nice, almost as if I couldn't remember what had happened that night. I would ask them things like, well, why would you do this? I was bleeding. Did you not see that I was bleeding? Why was my neck covered in bruises afterward? And at those moments, the guys would get pretty nervous and they would start drawing back a little bit from how much information they were giving me.
So, Frank, what can we take away from the fact that police kind of set up these calls, right? And I guess this is a normal part of police work where they have an alleged victim here and they call the alleged suspects and I guess see if they'll tell them anything, right?
Sure. I mean, these phone calls happen all the time. I've heard a number of them. Sometimes they result in admissions by the defendants. or accused, and sometimes they don't. In this case, obviously, they started to feel uncomfortable, and that nervousness that she is describing could be the fact that they don't know what she's talking about, right? Or it could be that they figured out that this is a controlled call, which is what we call them. I know they call them pretext calls, but certainly the police use them as evidence and as a weapon. And in this case, it obviously didn't bear any fruit.
There are obviously questions as well for the Buffalo Bills front office. Who knew what, when, what type of investigation has the team conducted? What about the NFL? I want to share the full statement that we got from the Buffalo Bills, and it says, quote, "We were recently made aware of a civil complaint involving Matt from October 2021. Due to the serious nature of the complaint, we conducted a thorough examination of this matter. As this is an ongoing civil case, we will have no other comment at this point." So, Frank, as you parse those words, what does this tell you about how the Bills have handled this and what to make of all these calls from a lot of fans, not all of them, but a lot of fans who say Araiza should no longer be on the team?
Well, obviously they did their due diligence. If this attorney, as we listened to him a couple minutes ago talk about getting on the case 6 weeks ago and immediately hiring a private investigator, and if they have found evidence to suggest that this did not happen, then I'm sure that they did their due diligence before. I mean, the cuts came back last week, right? They waived the punter last week, so I think they did their due diligence on this. I'm sure fans are clamoring. Look, if this is true, that's one thing. If this is not true, it's another thing, right? And under our system, you are innocent until proven guilty. And at this point in time, if this was reported 10 months ago and there's no criminal charges at this point in time, I think this person should be left to lead their life. And if the Bills did the investigation, they must have done a thorough investigation. I can tell you that. They certainly have able counsel that I'm sure vetted this also.
Frank, I've only got about 30 seconds left, but I think this is important, and you just touched on it. This is a civil lawsuit. You do not need probable cause or meet any legal burden in order to sue someone like this. No criminal charges have been filed. Araiza, through his attorney, denied that he raped anyone or that any of this sexual assault happened. At the same time, you have this young woman who says it did happen. She gave graphic details. Her attorney says, she went right to police. She told other people. She wrote diary entries. So we really right now have these two competing stories, yet so many people already have their mind made up. So I wonder, where do we go from here and how do we get to the truth? How does this play out?
Well, it plays out, first of all, it will likely not play out very long. I would anticipate a settlement. Whether you're guilty or not, in some of these cases, and of course, a civil case is so different than a criminal case, right? There's a different burden. A criminal burden is a proof beyond a reasonable doubt, which is a much higher standard, as opposed to a civil burden, which is a preponderance of the evidence. But in a civil case, you're getting into depositions, you're getting into discovery of medical records, things like that, and a lot of people don't want to do that. So maybe he settles this out of court, and that's likely possible just so it goes away, and with no admission of guilt, with a confidentiality agreement and a non-disclosure agreement. That's very likely where it would happen. Even if you saw the text that were given out by her attorney today, that his attorney said, "Look, what's your client's number?" And at that point in time, you're as a defendant in a civil case, you're thinking to yourself, okay, what's the cost-benefit analysis of going through this?
And of course, we continue to see if there will be any criminal charges filed. Again, we're told that the investigation is ongoing. That would be a big factor. Frank LoTempio III is a local attorney and legal analyst for us. Frank, always great to have you on. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Well, this lawsuit is in the headlines now, just after the NFL decided to suspend Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson for 11 games for violating the league's personal conduct policy for sexual assault allegations. A lot of people talking about that today in the context of what we're dealing with. As far as punishment, though, our Bills insider and longtime NFL reporter Vic Carucci explains that this case is very different because the alleged incident happened before Araiza was drafted.
Matt Araiza won't face league discipline, at least not right now, because the alleged incident happened while he was in college. And it's clearly spelled out in the collective bargaining agreement between the league and the players that the league has no jurisdiction over what happens with a player from college. Now, Terrell Pryor, a former Bills receiver, when he entered the league in 2011 with the Raiders, he was suspended for the first 5 games that year It did stem from stuff that happened while he was at Ohio State, and that included accepting illegal payment, and he hired an agent to get basically disqualified by the NCAA because he wasn't going to finish his college career there. So he entered the supplemental draft of the NFL. Roger Goodell, in making the decision on the 5-game suspension, was citing pretty much that Pryor was trying to manipulate the draft process. Now, one note here, a league source tells me that if the criminal investigation with Araiza were to continue, things could get interesting as far as possible involvement of the league with discipline.
Our thanks to Vic Carucci. And just moments ago, ESPN's Adam Schefter tweeted that Matt Araiza will not be punting in tonight's preseason game in Carolina. We do know that he arrived at the stadium with the rest of the team, but will not play tonight, according to that tweet. Kickoff scheduled for 7 o'clock tonight.